Hi everybody. Thanks for joining us on this lovely Friday afternoon. We're going to explore using ArcGIS Online, and we've got a great workshop ahead. I'm going to give you some intro stuff, and then I'm going to turn it over to the extremely capable Sean, who's going to lead you through the exercise. But before we start, I'll just give you a little bit of a background. Some of you have seen these slides before if you've been on any of our workshops, but we're all part of a program called the Informatics and GIS program, IGIS. We're part of the University of California Ag and Natural Resources. We're a statewide program. And we also represent this UCANR network of cooperative extension offices, research and extension centers, and affiliated campuses. We're all people connecting the power of UC research with local communities. We love doing this kind of science outreach work. And the way our particular group does it is through mapping and mapping technology. We do a lot of trainings like this. We provide GIS services. We also can help with research. We fly drones. And if you're interested in any of this stuff, please do reach out. Our website is there, but we'll give that at the end of the slide show as well as throughout. So this is who IGIS is. We're a small but mighty group. I'm Maggie Kelly. I'm a cooperative extension specialist. I'm based at Berkeley. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a slideshow here. I'm the director of IGIS. And like I said, we also have Sean Hogan, who is going to be leading the hands-on workshop portion. And then behind the scenes, we have a few folks. So if you're having any trouble with anything, please do put it in the chat and let us know what isn't working or what you might need help with. But this slide just demonstrates, while do this workshop, get immersed in this stuff, whether you're a beginner or more advanced. But then if you have other ideas or want to keep in touch, please do so. We have things like office hours. We host other workshops. We just really are all passionate about helping you incorporate spatial data and spatial data analysis into your work. So that's who we are. And this is who you are. You are mostly from California. You are undergrad and staff and faculty and grad students. And if some of you would please start it off, put in the chat something about yourself, if you care to, your name, and just briefly, your experience with ArcGIS Online. Are you a beginner or are you an expert? Just really quickly, just let us know what your vibe is, what you want to get out of this. So let's see. I'm going to see if anybody's starting. Nobody's starting yet, but if anyone would care to be the bold person to start. Nice. Thanks, Sarah. Great. No experience at all. You are in the right place. You're going to get some basic skills here. Bree, great. Helene. Oh, great. This is going to be super fun, you guys. So keep that chat scroll going. I'm going to turn my chat off so I can look at the slides. But ArcGIS Online and why you're here is probably because you want to get, up to date on how to use this important technology. And so that's what we're going to do today. I'm going to give you a kind of a slideshow introduction. I'm going to give you a real speedy intro to GIS. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about how the technology is organized in this one particular software ecosystem called Esri. So we're going to talk about how to do mapping in ArcGIS Online. We're going to talk about some of the basic building blocks of all of this, which are web maps and web apps. We're also going to touch a little bit on what kind of analysis you can do in the cloud and ArcGIS Online. We're going to talk about why you might want to use ArcGIS Online, and then I'm going to do a real brief primer on some important concepts that you need to know when you're doing GIS in the cloud. It's not the same. So some of you might have taken a GIS class where you're working, on your desktop locally. It's not exactly the same. So I'm just going to give you a quick primer on that. There's lots more resources out there, but just sit tight and see if some of this makes sense. And then I'm going to walk you through kind of this generic workflow. And then we're going to turn it over to Sean, and he's going to give you a deep dive into what the software is going to look like in your browser and how you're going to add data and how you're going to manipulate data. And he's going to go through this super patiently because it's a lot. But this is where, if you're having any trouble or something's not working, we're a small enough group. Feel free to chime in or just put your comments in the chat. All right, this is off to my brief intro to GIS. So a geographic information system is just a software package or set of software components that represents the four-dimensional world, the 3D world through time in a computer. And the way GIS do this is by stripping out that four-dimensional world into these layers. So in that picture on the right, you've got some topography, you've got some imagery, you've got some polygons or some lines and some points. And the idea is that all of this works together because it's all geo-referenced, which means every lat long is known on the surface of the Earth, and that's the indexing system that a GIS uses. Everything is stripped apart into these layers and then brought back together again because we know where it is on the surface of the Earth. And that means we can do all kinds of powerful spatial analysis, like what's next to me, or how far away am I from this, or what's the most efficient way to, route my Amazon trucks to deliver the following things. But we can also do a lot with cartography and design and make beautiful maps. And this whole world of mapping is so much fun. It's so fun to get immersed in. So I'm thrilled that you're all here with us to get started. And a little bit of background. So GIS, like I said, is taking the complex world and making it into these layers and then pulling these layers, these geo-reference layers, into a software package. And recently we've gone through a real revolution in the way we think about GIS software. From the origins of digital GIS in the 1980s up till about 2012, everything was local. In software like ArcInfo, ArcView, ArcMap, some of you might have used this. You pull stuff down onto your computer, you work on it because you've installed a piece of software on your computer. But since 2012, we've really had a revolution. And now we have the option of doing local work, and the software for doing desktop GIS is called ArcGIS Pro. But we also have the ability to work in the cloud through a browser, and that's ArcGIS Online. And of course, you can go back and forth between these two, and the license that you have allows you to do that. Today, we're going to be, stuck up in the cloud, and there's a lot of advantages to that because you don't have to install this big, beefy, expensive piece of software on your desktop and make sure it's always updated and make sure, everything works all the time. You just open up a browser and you do all this amazing stuff. It's really, really exciting. So let's talk a little bit more about doing work in the cloud. So before ArcGIS Online, before we could do GIS in the cloud, GIS was really the realm of GIS professionals. The software, like I said, was a specialized software loaded on desktop computers. Sharing data was a real pain. It was very cumbersome. You'd zip up packages, you'd email it to your colleague, or you'd zip up packages, stick it up in an FTP site, your colleagues would download it. It just, after 2012, we now talk about doing web GIS, much more data accessibility. We have the ability to make web maps and web apps and doing analysis in the cloud. GIS can be used by anyone. You can access by browsers. It's just a much slicker and kind of more immediate way to do GIS work. So why you might want to use ArcGIS Online, why some of you are here, you might want to create web maps and web apps. You might want to link to loads of apps, and I'm going to tell you about these apps in a moment. You might want to perform analysis. You might want to access loads of data. It's fast, it's intuitive, it's browser-based. ArcGIS Online is really, really great. And so when we're doing this work in the Esri ecosystem, so Esri is the parent company that has created all the software I've mentioned before, ArcGIS Pro, the desktop, ArcGIS Online, the cloud. Esri has made both of those. When we're talking about doing WebGIS in Esri, so that's in the cloud, we're talking about creating web maps. And these are essentially buckets where we pull data in, we create custom symbology, we can organize how these data layers might be labeled or searched for, or sort of a few more interactive aspects. We can do some analysis in web maps. That bucket of data that we've kind of customized, we can then push into a web app, which means we're going to publish it to the web. We can add a lot more interoperability, more layout options, more ways to interact with the data. But it's the web apps are all based on what you've done in the web app. And then the third aspect about ArcGIS Online is web analysis. And this has been transformational in the last 5 years. Esri is adding more and more analytical capability to that cloud-based environment. It's extremely exciting. So this slide just repeats what I just said. The first thing we're going to do is create web maps, and these are these buckets. So the example there is, this is a web map that shows where all ANR employees are. We've put on a custom symbology, the points we've changed to make distinct. We can then push that into web apps. And again, I'm going to talk about web apps in a little bit more, but these are ways to interact with that mapping data. Some of those apps allow you to push the data onto your phone to go out and collect data in the field. Some of them allow you to take that map data and push it to a story map to make a really clear, interactive, visual, kind of journalistic styled website. And we have trainings on how to create that. And some of them might be dashboards where I'm going to push a series of maps into a website where I can have charts and scrolling. And as I search for as I filter something, everything is going to be updated. So we start simple with web maps. We move to a little bit more design aspects in web apps. And then we don't want to forget that if we want to do some analysis, there's a load of cool stuff we can do. I've just taken a snapshot here showing some of the custom tools that are up there right now. Used to be you had to do all of this on your desktop in Pro, but you don't anymore. So it's, like I said a million times, it's very exciting. We're staying within the Esri ecosystem here. We do a lot of Esri work. They are the #1 software provider for GIS. They really are a great resource, and we in ANR have a license for all of the Esri products, so it's a good place to play. They are really kind of wanting all of us to think about this workflow. They call it the data design develop workflow. Data is where are you going to get your data? And like I said before, ArcGIS Online, it was zip it up, email it to my buddy. Now there's so many choices, and it's really quick to pull data from online repositories and pull them into your ArcGIS Online to make that web map. We're going to design our web map in a particular app inside ArcGIS Online, and then we're going to develop it a little bit more through these more customizable apps. So another thing, I love ArcGIS Online. I love it a lot. It doesn't do some things as well as other software. Some of the cartography and design are better in desktop software, but this is really changing. And I think Probably Shane might disagree with me by now, but you might really just really want to do some tweaking. And so cartography, you might it'd be better in Pro. But you can do so much now in ArcGIS Online. Projection control, so controlling how your spatial data is the geographic projection, which is just how do we take the 3D Earth and stretch it into a 2D layer. If you really need to control projection control, like you're a surveyor, you're going to want to do some of that work in Pro. And then there advanced analysis, but this is really, really changing rapidly. There's lots of important stuff or lots of capacities that are being added to ArcGIS Online. Oh, I just took a snapshot of some cool stuff that I just, yeah, some really neat, like some of these modeling things that you could never have done in ArcGIS Online, like distance allocation, distance accumulation, what's my optimum path, all this stuff. This is all in the cloud now. It's mind blowing, especially if you're like a teacher. It's just really going to be a game changer. Very, very exciting. Okay, so we're going to work in the cloud today. We're going to work in ArcGIS Online. I've mentioned this desktop software called ArcGIS Pro. That's the local one. There are some things to remember about working in each of these domains. We're going to stick in cloud today, but I want to tell you about this just because it's important to kind of understand about these things. The first thing is, back in the day when you were working locally with Pro, everything was installed in this giant software. And this giant software package had all these libraries of these different sort of functions and routines. I want to do, cost allocation. There was a way to do that in Pro, but it was all installed locally. Now, when we're working in the cloud, it's a different paradigm, and everything is done through this constellation of these apps, and all of the Esri apps have their own logo. So you're going to see these kind of little logo-y things all the time. So just bear that in mind. It's like you're going to be in ArcGIS Pro and you're going to be using whatever app you need for the task. So for example, today we're going to be using Map Viewer and Experience Builder. Those are just little bit pieces of software that reside in ArcGIS Online, but you might be wanting to use this in the field, in which case you're going to use Field Maps. It's another app. You might want to build one of those story maps I was telling you about. That's a story map app. So this is just the constellation of all these little software pieces that you can use to do your task. The next thing I want to tell you about is data formats. For those of you who've done desktop GIS and sort of more traditional GIS, you were working with local data formats, and these were like shape files or geodatabases. You'd zip them up, you'd download them, you'd unzip them, and you'd work on them on your desktop software. When you're working in the cloud, we don't think about it the same way. We think about them as these layers and services. And so layers are the data and any symbology that it's attached to it. And services are how can this data set be used? And so these are essentially just sort of coded text that tells us about the data. And when you're working in the cloud, we're going to be talking about layers and services, not, where's my shapefile, where's my geodatabase. So it's just going to be a little bit of a switch. And if you're just starting from scratch in the GIS, this is great. You might get a shapefile once in a while, but you might just want to start, working in cloud native formats like these layers. Sean's going to go over this in detail, but I mentioned one of the huge advantages of ArcGIS Online is just the wealth of data out there. And there's two main sources that you're going to be using today and in your work. And one is called Living Atlas. And this is a data repository that Esri has curated. These are cloud native data sets. They are vetted and yeah, they're curated. They're the best data sets that Esri can find, and it's growing every day. And you're going to find them in when you look for data. Sean's going to go through all this, but Living Atlas is sort of the premium place where you're going to find data. There's another important data source called ArcGIS Online, which is a huge repository of all the data sets that users have pushed up to this repo. So it's not curated in the same way as Living Atlas is. I might go out and collect some data and then, shove it up in ArcGIS Online and say, oh, it's public. I might not have, done a great job, but it's a really, really fun place to explore. So those are two important places where you're going to get data. Another place where you're going to find data, and Sean again will hint or we'll talk about this, is your content. These are things that maybe you've created and you've only shared with yourself or your groups or your organization. I'm going to touch on sharing in a moment. Oh, I'm going to touch on sharing right now. So again, this is the different paradigm when we're working in the cloud, we're working with these layers. And part of those services that I mentioned is you've got to tell the software how you want that data to be shared. Do you want it just to be private to you? Do you want it to be shared within a group? Do you want it to be shared within your organization, or do you want it to be public? So all of you who are in UCANR, that's the organization. You might want to set up a group that's just your, particular group of colleagues. So that's what we have in IGIS. So I have data that's just for me. I'm still working on it. I have data that's within my group. That's IGIS. I have data that's within UCANR, and then I have data that's shared publicly. And it's important to pay attention to that kind of stuff. But the gist of it all is this data design develop paradigm. You're working in ArcGIS Online. The first step is, where do I get my data? And if you want to work in a cloud native format, which is easy, you're going to grab it from ArcGIS Online or from Living Atlas. You can also push data up from ArcGIS Pro. There's all kinds of ways you can get data. But when it comes into ArcGIS Online, it's going to be called a hosted feature layer. So it's going to be one of these layers. You're going to pull that data set and any other data set into Web Map Viewer. It's one of these apps, and you're going to design a web map. Change the color, make one thing on top of the other. Bring in an outline of a county, for example. When you've got your web map designed, you can push it to these other web apps. We're going to use Experience Builder, and that creates a gorgeous online web app. But as I mentioned before, there are lots of other ways. There's field maps if you want to do stuff in the field, story maps if you want to create this journalistic experience, and then dashboards. But there's tons of others. These are just the ones that we sort of concentrate on. And so Sean will also go through this, but you want to think about some of the design considerations. Who's your users, your audience, and your stakeholders? What's the objective of your map? What needs to be symbolized on your map? How is it going to be symbolized? What do I want to include and what do I want to leave out? And are there any ethical considerations of the map? Am I showing data that maybe I shouldn't be showing publicly? Should I make sure some of these data sets are more protected? These kinds of things. There's also some logistical considerations for these web maps. You might want to ask, are they dynamic or can they be static? And what data do you need? And how's it going to be hosted? Is it all coming from Living Atlas, or is it going to come from a place that, the site might actually go down? Is the web map going to be part of an existing website? Do you want to support multiple platforms? Do you want people to be able to see your map on a tablet or a smartphone? Do you need to support offline access? Maybe you want to collect field data using some kind of app. and how much programming will be required today. And for a lot of the work that you can do in ArcGIS Online, you don't need to program. It's zero programming. It's great. And then how much money are you willing to spend? Okay, so with that, with those design considerations, I'm going to pause it here and I'm going to stop share so I can see if there's any questions in the chat that I need to answer.
Haven't seen
Great.
any. Nothing yet, Maggie.
Okay, terrific. All right, Sean. So I'm going to hand it off to you and take it away for the workshop.
Okay, sounds good. Just one moment. There we go. Turn off a couple things and sharing my screen. All right, just to start off, that's always a perfect introduction to what we're going to work on hands-on. But with that said, the next roughly 25 minutes are still going to be some show and tell. So you're not going to have to be actually working with ArcGIS Online quite yet. We'll start that in the beginning of the next hour and on through to the very end. But right now, you should have received an email around 11:49 today. If you're using the Zoom from the previous emails I sent you, there's another one as of today that has the workshop exercise that I'm going to go through, as well as the presentation that Maggie just gave. And there's also information about getting a ArcGIS on license specifically from UCANR. And I didn't check the roster to see who's here right now. And if any of you are affiliates from, say, UC Berkeley or any of the other or any of our other partnering organizations or just private. But if you want to go through all the steps, you probably need to have a UCANR-IGIS issued license. That's usually not much of a problem the way the workshop is designed, but there are some things that you won't have access to if you're not part of our organizational account. If you have another organizational account, you can try to make your way through, but it is really easy for Shane Fire, who's on the call right now, to set you up with a temporary license if you need one, if you don't already have one. And if you do need one, go ahead and put it in the chat. He'll start helping you on that. And then there'll be about a 10-minute break right before the end of the hour that you can finish getting all set up so you're ready to go and we start actually getting our hands dirty with the application. Good. I'm going to close this so I don't get pop-up messages in our recordings here. And I have a bunch of different things open because what I typically do before each one of these workshops is go through the exercise and make sure that there is nothing that's changed. And fortunately, the only minor changes to ArcGIS Online this time around are positive and they don't affect anything that we're doing. There's one specific thing that I'll pull out that is just very recently, as of the end of February, was introduced that I haven't used yet because I haven't had a call for it, but there's always new and cool tools that are being added to ArcGIS Online. But before I go on to that, I digress a little bit. I know many of us have got used to online learning as kind of following COVID and so forth, but specifically for these workshops, there's a couple of things that I like to suggest. One is that, or point out, we only have so much real estate on our screen. So we have to leaf over some of the things that we're working on, one of which being the exercise that I gave to you earlier. That's handy because there's some places within that you can copy and paste from to just, we don't have to have a speed typing exercise here. We can just copy and paste labels or titles across or files that we're going to search for. And then we're going to have our working session that's going to be in this, which I recommend putting perhaps in the center of your screen. And finally, having the Zoom window over to the right side, in my case, is what I do and what I might recommend. The thing is each person has their own strategy of how they go through it. Sometimes some folks like to follow the exercise more closely and then listen to what I'm talking about. More often than not, I think that participants will set the Zoom up and then watch my Zoom and then replicate what I'm doing on their hands-on exercise. And then occasionally some people just like to watch what I do and then try to go back over it later. Noting that as of about mid next week, this recording of this workshop will be posted on our UCANR-IGIS YouTube channel, which has a whole bunch of videos on there, including a previous version of this workshop that I gave last September that is on there. That'll be extremely similar to what we're covering here today. But by following along, then you'll have a chance to ask questions, see like problem shoot anything that pops up for you, because it's very often, at least for me, I've had some cases where what I need to do is just one button away, and I wish I just would have just had someone to ask. And that finding that button might take a half hour, might take longer to get that where you just clicked it and you would have got where you needed to go. So if you have any of those types of questions, go ahead and put them in the chat. But there's not many of us today, so you can just unmute yourself and ask if the timing's right, and we'll make sure that everybody gets what they need. So with that, I'm going to have the exercise to the side, and I'm going to split off a window right now that will show what we're working toward. I need to move this down a little bit so it's outside of my Zoom is in the way a little bit. Good. Oh, here we go. So I'm going to split this off and put it in the center without it attaching. There we go. So this is going to be something like what we're working toward today, is a fire map of a Caldor fire from 2021 that was really meaningful for me. This is obviously a very sometimes very terrible circumstances happening with more frequency in California. And I will get to the story of how I came to developing this map in a little while, but we're going to be working with fire data. There isn't any major live fires going on in California right now for other examples, so we're going to be using this historical data. But one thing to note is that whatever the topic or the interest of what your possible web map might be, it's going the same techniques of bringing in data, some of the cartographic principles that we'll be looking at will apply to any number of different kind of interests that you might have for, again, developing your own personalized web maps. When you bring up ArcGIS Online, and I'm going to navigate out, or I'm going to start a new session here. If you already have your ArcGIS on license, you can log in right now if you like, but note that, again, this is just going to be show and tell. You don't have to actually follow along with what I'm doing. So I'm going to say ArcGIS Online. I'm going to just click on this and enter, and it's going to you'll see this pop up, and then I'll usually go straight to sign in. If you click on this, it'll give you a sign in the center. And so I'll sign into ArcGIS Online using the credentials that hopefully you already have. So when your ArcGIS Online first comes up, it depends on each user might be a little bit different. In my case, it came straight up to my content, but for this initial kind of overview, I'm just going to give you just a basic introduction to where the buttons and levers are in ArcGIS Online, and just give, again, just an overview of what we're looking at here. Starting with the tabs across the top, and start off with home on the far left side. Sometimes when you open up your application, particularly for the very first time, this might be what you're looking at. And it's just a splash page for your given organization's account that you don't ever really work from, but it's there. The next online across the top is gallery. So each organization, in our case, UCANR, we have created or curated a whole bunch of layers, hundreds and hundreds at this point, and some of which might be related to fire history that you're looking in the center. It might be parcel data for something in particular, wild fowl flyaways. any number of different projects that have occurred within UCNR. We have data here, both data layers, but also maps, web maps, and map files. And I'm going to kind of like retouch on some of the terminology that Maggie already introduced, so you maybe will be able to kind of conceptualize it a little bit more in personally, because some of these names, some of these things that we're saying sound very similar to, for example, a web map versus a web mapping application. Sound very similar, but they're two different things that are interrelated. But I continue here with the layers. So we have layers that we have that are available, apps that have been built, web apps, story maps. This is a hot topic that we cover in some of our other workshops. And then a bunch of other things that are available in here, including notebooks, which we'll get to in a moment. So yeah, this is where you can find all kinds of layers that are all available to you if they've been shared at the organizational level at least. We'll touch on organization. Next in line is going to be map, but we're going to come back to that because that's what we're going to actually be working from the most typically. The next one along is scene. And inside a scene, we're not going to be working with this today, but I bring it up because it is a neat tool within ArcGIS Online that can be valuable for creating very neat web maps. In this case, we have drone imagery that was collected over the Hopland Research and Extension Center. And you can see it's 3D with different like little icons and labels that show where objects are at within this valley. And what's neat about this is if you took the URL from this and if it was shared appropriately, which we will be doing during our exercise, then you could take this URL, put it into something like an iframe to then be displayed within your website. So this pretty powerful tool that's within here. Now you might notice now that across the top we have lost the banner, like the horizontal banner of different options. And that's because if you can see where my cursor's at the top left-hand corner, there's now a little hamburger stack. And if I click on that, then you'll have a stack of the various tabs that are available through ArcGIS Online. The next one being is notebooks. So I'm going to click on that. Now I noted in the original, the chat that well, at least one of you is somewhat of an expert on R and perhaps Python as well. And what's neat about this is built on top of Jupyter Notebooks using Python is for code. And it is really neat in that it is allowed things that you could not possibly do just a couple of years ago in ArcGIS Online. Traditionally speaking, when you would do analysis like deeper or more complex analysis, you would always do it on a desktop, and then you would publish your results to the online environment. But now, as Maggie was noting, you can do a lot of that analysis in ArcGIS Online, and this is one of the ways that you could do that is by creating a new notebook. You can select your standard levels of processing. So some of them take more processing or allow you a lot more processing power because some processing is computationally intensive. So say you were going to do more detailed interpolation or you're going to do some kind of more just heavier lifting of processing, you would probably go with the advanced GPU support. But the standard processing could be fine. But once you bring that up, you'll see something looks familiar to you, the Python notebook, and finally it's going to come up in a second. It's a little slower than I'm used to seeing it. But inside of here, you can actually start adding and creating code snippets and that sort of thing in this environment. We're not going to be covering that, but just note that Shane Fire, he does a workshop on Python in ArcGIS, which is really, really cool. So you can look for the YouTube channel for that, or we'll probably repeat that at some point, maybe in the fall, perhaps. So moving back. So we've covered home, gallery, scene, notebooks, groups. That's the next one along. So I've noted that you can share it at different levels, and one of those levels that you can share it at is at a group level. This is particularly useful if you're using your ArcGIS Online to support something like a mobile data collection app, such as field maps, because you might have a crew of people that have the expert knowledge to be able to, say, collect data on tree disease, that you wouldn't want to just have any random person collecting that data. So you can create a group that would be specifically for that purpose. And you can name the group and then invite members to that group. And so that's one level that you can then share at, and we'll see the sharing settings here shortly. But you can have groups that then you can add and delete members from those groups, and each person can have their own selection of groups and be members of other folks' groups as well. And then I'm going to move on to content across the top. Now, this is one of the areas, if you're not working in ArcGIS Online, if you're not working on your map, the next likely place that you're probably working is within your content, either organizing your content or perhaps creating apps. You can create experience builder apps or web apps of a number of different flavors that then you're bringing in your content from here to create that new app. Or you could be creating data. So you can create new features and add them in, or upload imagery if you have that license level that's available to you. When it comes to some of these functionalities, by the way, they're not automatically provided to every participant or within the organization's licensing. If you want to do something and you're not able to do it, then reach out to your human administrator for your ArcGIS Online. I say human because there's also licensed administrators applications, but yeah, reach out to that person to elevate your access to some of these tools. Again, something like uploading imagery might be an example of that. But within your content, starting to the left, you'll see a bunch of folders. And this is a way of organizing your data, and it builds up over time. And you'll see one of my strategies of how I deal with that also, with a lot of redundant files. But in this case, I have a whole number of projects that I've worked on over time that I throw data into, including a junk folder. That's one that if I open that up at some point, I don't want to delete all of these because I made at least one of these today, but I can delete some of these and get rid of them. And then just, delete those when the time comes. So you can have more and delete and get rid of those because I don't need those anymore. Good. So you can set folders up like that, so because you'll get tons and tons of layers in different projects over time. You can see this. Now I'm going to go back to all of my content. Within here, you'll see a number of different types of data or maps or models in this case. So this is analysis model that was created in here. There's instant apps. We'll be creating one of those today. There's web maps. So just to touch on this a little bit more, you'll have web maps, which are the basic map that you'll be working on. And then when you create something like a web mapping application, let's see if I have one here that, well, an instant app is a web mapping application. Once you publish this web map and add it to a web mapping application like an instant app, that's where you're going to be able to include widgets, north arrows, titles, all of that kind of thing. So that's where some more, not all of the cartographic design occurs, but more cartographic design for kind of a final project in that journalistic, sometimes web page-esque sort of product that you'll have in the end. You'll see feature layers, and then you'll see in this case hosted. Hosted is, so each feature layer is a layer of data that, with the way that it's hosted, has different rules that say that you can analyze it, you can edit certain things within it, well, at least within your own environment. But if it's not hosted with rules that are possible for you, I can show you a kind of a workaround for being able to download it into your own collection of data, then to be able to work with it more thoroughly. And then web experience, that comes from the experience builder, another web mapping application. I'm not going to go through all of these. You can see story map at the bottom. There's a bunch of different, types of data or maps or applications that you have available to you. If you get to the point where you want to, if you're going to always be coming back to some of these, you can add them to favorites, and then across the top, you can click on favorites and see all these different favorite layers that you might come back to over time. Redundantly, you can also go to groups or your organization for data to look through that as well to see what you might want to add to one of your web maps or web mapping applications. And then finally, you see Living Atlas over there in the far right. We'll be drawing in data from Living Atlas during the exercise. But just note, back when I first started doing this, like somewhere around 20 years ago, probably the biggest challenge to creating maps, there was no on like web mapping at that point, but just creating maps was getting data. Now, because of a lot of the online accessibility, is that you have, I would say, hundreds of thousands of layers or maps or types of data that are right at your fingertips. And Living Atlas is one of the largest repositories of that data, as well as ArcGIS Online, that we'll also be pulling data from. Good. Back to content. And finally, I'm going to just touch on organization. It's going to look different for you than it does for me, because for me, it'll show a whole bunch of credits that's for everybody in our organization. But I just note this just because every function you run can use up a number of credits. Like you've seen the last week, we've burned through about 6,000, 7,000 credits. That's probably a pretty lightweight week for us. We have set limits now for users. I believe the default is 10,000 credits.
That is correct, Sean.
Yes. And the reason we've done that is one time we had an advisor who's a great advisor, but was not aware of the credit issue, tried to geocode every address in LA County twice and used up virtually all of our credits. So, if you need more credits for anything and you're within our organization, just reach out to Shane and he can help you out with that. So we do have about 392 members within we have 669 members now working with ArcGIS Online via ANR. Now, this is one of the reasons I came to this area, and this is almost the last thing I'll show you before we go on to the web map. But the online licenses, there's a bunch of licenses that are available to us for different applications, including, in my case, I like Drone to Map is one of the ones that's, if you go down far enough, Drone to Map Standard. But there's all these different extensions that are associated with ArcGIS Online that you can control and get access to. And again, that'll look a little different for you because you'll have more limited, but if you need something, you can reach out to us and get it. Two last things I want to touch on before we take a break is there's this little 9 dots at the top right-hand corner. And if you click on that, you'll see a bunch of the peripheral apps that Maggie mentioned before, that how the Esri, the parent company of ArcGIS Online and ArcGIS Pro, as well as Survey 123. Well, Living Atlas is associated with them. I don't know that it's necessarily owned by ArcGIS, but there's a whole bunch of these other peripheral applications that connect ArcGIS Online, with ArcGIS Online essentially functioning as a hub for data and accessibility. And that and what today we're going to be using Experience Builder and the Map Viewer. And Map Viewer will create an instant app, is where we'll do it from there. And Experience Builder will create a different kind of web mapping application. There's also Story Maps, is something that we just recently did a workshop on, which is fun to play with as well. You can check out our YouTube channel for that exercise or workshop. Lastly, I'm going to go to the web map, and it'll come up fresh. You might note that it is different than what I had shown earlier when I first, well, I guess we don't, that's separate. It is already been, oh no, it's far over here. It's different than this because this is live in a different session. That's and I don't necessarily need the viewer anymore. When you first open it up, you'll see with it blank, basically what we're looking at right here. And we'll start off by adding some data to our map. We'll see that right in about 10, 15 minutes, we'll be starting to do that. And then this is where you'll have layers, and I'm going to switch over to the other map because without anything in there, it won't make sense. But this is where I add data. We have layers that we can add in here. This is the layer stack here. If I want to expand this so it's a little bit easier for you to understand, that might help. There's the layers, tables that are associated with layers, base maps. There's something like 29 the last time I counted. I like the hybrid imagery in this case, but some situations it calls for different types of base maps. And then the saving and opening different projects, as well as sharing your map and creating apps, is all across the side here. This is sort of a convention for Esri now, and not just this application, but in a number of others, is that if you click on one of your layers on the left side, a conditional pane will appear on the other right side that is associated with what you clicked on the left. So in this case, I clicked on some damage inspection network data, and then the different characteristics of that popped up over there, including how to change the style or symbology, that kind of thing. And we're going to get into that here shortly. But just to understand, anytime you work on something on the left, I click on it, it's going to give different conditions of what you can have access to on the right, whether it's a raster or a vector. Raster being an image that you see here with pixels, or a vector being points, lines, or polygons that are treated different in terms of their style and symbology or analysis for that matter. Good. I think that's enough of a good beginning. Let's take a 10-minute-ish break, come back just maybe a little before 10 after 2, and we will dive into creating this for yourself. And by the end, we're going to be publishing 2 different versions of this in 2 different ways that'll be similar, just to see some of the options that you have at your fingertips. So if everybody can get logged into ArcGIS Online, and when you come up, it'll probably look something like this. I'm going to check out the chat real quick. Let me know if you are having any trouble logging on, because I don't want to leave anybody behind here right at the beginning. Adjust my screens. Good. No one's raising their hand that they're having trouble, so I assume that's a good thing. Just note that I've already covered pretty much everything through the almost to the end of page 11 in the directions. That was all the introductory stuff that I just covered. And now we're going to start creating our maps and move, again, working toward that fire map that I created before. I know it takes few minutes for people to trickle back in here. It's a beautiful day out though, isn't it? Good. So a little bit about this exercise, just so you know, when I present it in the workshop, I streamline a few things. Specifically, I include the how to do the style changes, the symbology changes as layers are coming in and do it at that time. However, that's out of order in the directions because for the sake of having a document that you can easily search and say, I want to like look at how to do symbology, I put it in a certain section inside of the directions. But I to make things just go smoother and to make sure that the glide path of the workshop ends on time, then I include those things into the exercise as we're moving along instead of doing them all at once at the end, which I don't think would be quite as fun. There's also going to be sections that you'll see within the exercise that say information only. Those are just tips and tricks throughout, and sometimes they're just suggestions of how you could bring in data, but we're not going to be doing it in the workshop necessarily. And I'll part a little bit from some of the directions because even while they're good the way they are, and hence why we haven't changed them, I found different ways to add things in, like the U.S. Census counties early on, and so we can use that for one of the later steps that's useful. In fact, that is going to be right about where we start. So if you've logged in, you brought up your ArcGIS Online. I'm going to reduce the chat because it's going to get in the way of too many things. So if anybody has a question, go ahead and shout it out. There's just running out of screen space here. And I don't want to have too many things covered up. So when you bring up your ArcGIS Online, it should looks like something like this. And we're going to go straight to map. Just jump right off with bringing in layers. And that once you can find and add layers to your map of various sorts, then that's like half the battle. Then the real work starts, is how to actually stylize it and change it around and then analyze it in some cases to make it really like useful. But yeah, getting your data in is step number one. And the way we do that, starting over on the left-hand side, now you go ahead and follow along and do what I do if you wish. Go up to the top left-hand corner and click on Add. And you'll see in the directions, it says, we're going to say add in U.S. county, census counties. I'm going to just Control C on that and go back to my map. So I've got add, browse layers, and we're going to bring this in from ArcGIS Online. Mentioned before, Living Atlas is a huge curation, but also ArcGIS Online has, I used to say tens of thousands of layers. I have a hunch they probably have hundreds of thousands of layers now on there. I'm going to click on ArcGIS Online. So we did add, browse layers. I don't want to have my content. I click the little drop down pointer next to it, and then scroll down through the drop down list to ArcGIS Online. And then right below that, I'm going to say Control V, or you can type it out, U.S. Census counties, and that will pop up on that's your first option. Note that if I click on this, you'll see a description of what we have there. So this is the overview. Sometimes this might be called metadata, is information about the data. So it gives you various descriptions depending on what layer you picked on. But this is important sometimes, especially if you need to cite where your layers are coming from. Then you then you want to refer to this. There's also, you can see status notifications, like this is an authoritative layer. So this is accurate, provided both ArcGIS Online and via Living Atlas, and Esri has curated it. And it's shared publicly to everybody. In fact, anytime you come across something where you go ArcGIS Online, it is publicly available to everybody. And I'll come to one of these later in the exercise, but and Maggie noted it too. It's some layers aren't necessarily ethical to share too broadly in your maps, even though legally I suppose you could, but it's just there's a lot of things that find their way onto here. So you're gonna use your best discretion on that. I'll show you an example of that in a little bit. But once you have this information, we can add it to our map. We can either click add right here, or we can click the add button on the left-hand side, which I'll do right now. Click add, and then I'll just close this box. So now you see counties all over the United States, but we're just going to be interested in California. Oh, something that I usually note, if you don't have, I should have noted it before, but I just take it for granted anymore. For working in virtually any kind of GIS, online or desktop, you're going to need a mouse or a trackball to be able to scroll around and keep up. If you're trying to do this on your touchpad or a button on your computer, it's going to be really difficult to be able to do a lot of the maneuvering that you need to do. And so I highly recommend, if you have one handy, getting a trackball and a mouse right away. But once we bring this in, this is going to be just a back layer that we're going to use. And if I now go out to layers, so see on the left-hand side underneath add, and I click on layers, you can see US counties there. If I click on that, it'll disappear that side pane that I noted earlier. If I click it again, it'll reappear. I don't really need to have this layer be this like light blue right now. It's like a semi-transparent light blue. And this will make a little more sense in a bit, but let's change the symbology of that right now, or the style. Those are two. You'll see it sometimes, it'll say symbology. Sometimes it'll say style. It just depends on the context. Oh, see here, edit layer style. Symbology, edit layer style. And inside of here, we're going to have a variety of options, but the main one, we're going to pick location single symbol. So the little orange box down below, I'll click on that. And then you'll click on the blue bar and you'll get some style options. I'm going to just go with black. And I'm going to set the transparency at about 50% roughly, give or take. Doesn't have to be that exact, but just to give it a shadow. And the reason why I'm doing this is, you'll see in a moment, it's going to accent the layers that come down on top of it. So if you get a little bit of a shading effect, it'll make the layers that are most important pop on your map. So there's, in the directions, it'll have us do all of these things all at once at the very end, but I like to see the map come together. And since I have a vision of where it's going, it makes it easier for me to just do it this way, and it's quicker. So now we have it in, and we can go down and click done down on the bottom right-hand corner, and click done again. And see here we have a grayed out part of the United States. Good. Little out of order out of the directions, but I like to do it right now, is change the base map. So we're going to go in and click on this base map option, the third one down, and you'll see all these different options. I'll give you a second. You can play with this if you'd like. You can just click on one of them just to see what it looks like. Click on another, see what it looks like. But let's settle on the hybrid imagery, is one of my favorites for a lot of different use cases. It's not always the best, depending on what you're doing, but it's really good for some things. And you'll see why here shortly. Having this, like Google Earth-esque imagery, but with labels in there to know where you're at or navigate to your given areas. Good. So see, now we've already started to create the formation of a kind of an appealing map, in my opinion. but doesn't have anything real specific about it that we're might be interested in. And that's what we're doing next. Let's go up to the add button again, top left-hand corner, and click on add. And click on browse layers again. So add top left, browse layers. And this time we're going to go down to our GIS Online. Let me double check that. I'm sure it is. Yes. Browse layers, ArcGIS Online. This is page 13. And we're going to search for Caldor fire. So I control C that, so copied it. And I'm going to control V to pop it in there. I'll give you a second if you want to just type that in. And we're going to use actually the first two layers that are in here. I'm just going to click on the first one in the center just so we can see what it's about. And this is a Caldor damage inspection database layer. So damage inspection network service that inspects fire damage around, well, damages at least in California. I don't know if it's a national thing or not. It very well, I know it's associated with Cal Fire, but essentially what this is when there's a major fire, the damage inspection network comes in and they inspect structures for damage. I have a friend that actually was one of the people that did the inspections for this fire. And when this, and so it doesn't say authoritative here, but I do know that this is a relatively authoritative layer. One thing to note, though, is if you're going to publish this online, you could put a disclaimer on your map saying that this data came from outside sources that are not verifiable, in which case it kind of takes off the doesn't lend itself to someone saying, well, you said that this way, or like you published this map that was accurate, supposedly. So I'm going to just add this to the map. Click add, and I'll X out of that, and you'll see a whole bunch. It's just a cluster because of the scale that we're at. It's not going to make sense. So we're going to scroll into it a little bit here. And I'm going to expand this so we can see it a little bit better. Good. So here's damaged structures, but we don't really have any kind of anything for a real great reference. Fortunately, though, the NRCS, the National Resource Conservation Service, I believe it's part of the subdivision of the USGS, their team has put together a burn severity map for this site, and wherein it doesn't say it's authoritative either, but I do believe it's probably quite good. And so I'm going to add this to the map as well. And now we'll see a map of burn severity in the burn scar of the fire. But here's something that this is a great spot where we'll see why there's a little nuance in the style that it'll occur with a lot of layers that you bring into your ArcGIS Online. And this is that there's a certain there's a visibility range that files can have that can be set. And in this case, it's not visible at the scale that we're looking at it right now. But if I go over to the left-hand side, so this is what I recommend, go over to the left side, click on layers. And so you on the very top, by the way, when you add in layers, they plot in the order that you put them down. So you have the county, the U.S. Census counties, they're on the bottom, the DINs, the Damage Inspection Network layers in the middle, and then you have the final soil burn severity on the top. But you don't see it. And if I click on this and I click on the little properties at the top right-hand corner. So see, I clicked on it. So it's got the associated properties on the right-hand side shows up. Go up to the little like sideways equalizer bars and click on that. And then if I scroll down, you'll see this visibility range. This little triangle is pointing at what scale you're at right now. So if I zoomed in, and I get below that threshold, then the burn severity will then appear. And it might take a moment. And it's taken more than a moment. I don't know why it's like holding up right now, but at different scales, it will show up. But if I zoom out beyond the range, it will not. The way to get around that is if you grab that little button, the far left, and scoot it all the way over, it should then appear. I do know, so if anyone else is having this little glitch that's occurring on my computer, which I've had variations of a glitch like this occur on different occasions over time, the way to get around that, and this is a great time to do this, is go over to save and open. So on the far left-hand side, click save and click save as. So we're going to have to give this a title. I don't remember what the directions said, but it doesn't really matter a lot. So I'm going to just call it AGOL practice or workshop map. I think I've used practice too many times. I'm going to say 2 just in case I've done it before. That's the title. Oh, by the way, I do it by reflex just because I've been doing GIS so long, and you'll see a lot of GIS people do this. I'll put underscores in, but in this case, you don't want underscores because in a lot of cases, the title, and in many cases, your title is going to carry over into your web mapping application, and it looks funky with the underscore. So if you have a good title for your map, it's better just to have like without underscores. And this is a place where you can do that. I'm gonna even try it without the 2 because I don't know that I've used this title before. If I've used the title before, and you'll see this occasionally when I'm going through the exercise, it might differ a little bit from what you've done or what you're doing, is because my contents can't have multiple files with the same name. Now go down and then tags, you might say fire, enter. So enter will add it in as a tag, but you gotta know that in most cases, you're required to add a tag. And I'm going to put in junk because we're going to write a junk folder, but I can search for junk or trash in my folders to delete out redundant layers or projects that I've done a bunch of times before in practice or in workshops. And this will be a repeat. So I'm just putting in junk. So here we go. We got our title and our tags, and I'm going to click save. It might take a moment, but once it's saved, now see how it's still not drawing correctly? The way I can get around that is then I can, once I've saved it, I can click refresh this page. You don't want to refresh the page if you haven't saved it though. See how now it appears? And it's not all funky. I don't know why it does that. And that seems to cure it. So now you can see that it's on top, and I'm going to go over and I'm going to click on it again so I can get the options from the far right-hand side that pop up. And I'll scroll down again. And so I have the visibility ranges all the way across. What we're going to do right now is grab the very corner of it, the far right-hand side, and bring it back to about street level. There we go. So just bring it back a little bit, like I've done here. And that way, when you zoom all the way in, you can see what's underneath the burned area map. So we're going to go now back over to the left-hand side underneath layers because it's written on the top, or it's like being displayed on the top. We want to bring the DINS map, the damaged structures map, to the top just so it pops out a little bit better. So how you do that is you just grab that little cluster of 6 dots right next to it, and you can pull one layer on top of the other to get it to right in the right order on your map. Good. Anybody having trouble so far? Bring up the chat. Looks like everyone's cruising along pretty well. All right,
I
good.
have a question.
Yes, please.
Mine still isn't showing the soil burn severity I did like the saving and everything, and it's still not showing it for me.
Did
Like the
you
layer's
change
just not.
did you change the visibility range?
Let me.
So if you click
Sorry, I'm
on it,
not very familiar with this, so.
oh, don't worry. None of us are born with this knowledge here. It takes a while to get the hang of it.
hmm
So if you click on it on your under your layers, and you'll see on the right-hand side the pane that comes up.
hmm
Click on the properties at the top, so it's on properties,
Okay.
and then scroll down and see where it says visibility. If that little triangle is not underneath the blue
Ah,
range, that's how you'll get it to appear.
okay. I got it now. Thank you.
I'm glad that you actually had that problem, because it gives me a chance to reiterate. This is something that pops up a lot. And even having done it, like, I don't know, 1,000 times, more than 1,000 times probably at this point, every time it happens, I'm all, where's my layer at? Oh, of course it's the visibility, but it's something that comes up more often than you would think.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So yeah, that's good. So you're set. Good. So now we have in the yes, the beginning of our web map. We flip to the directions, scroll down. So we got that, we got that. This is information only. All right. So now we're going to add in a little bit of living atlas data. And specifically, we're going to look for wildfire risk to communities. This is not going to be part of our final map, but there's a couple layers here that I want to add in because they're interesting and they might be pertinent for things that, if anybody here is at least interested in fire science, this is something that's interesting to me, at least in a practical way, because it could help hopefully inform firefighters or response teams or land managers, hopefully in the future, to mitigate potential disasters such as this. And that is, if you go over to add, browse layers, and click down for my content and living atlas. So add layers under the drop down from my content, go down to living atlas, click on that. And then under there, I'll paste it, but you can type in wildfire risk to wildfire risk will probably get you to where you need to go, but I placed it all the way in. So wildfire risk to communities is the first thing that pops up. And then I'm not going to read the directions on this. We're not going to use this in our final map, but I'm going to add it in now by just clicking the add button. And this is fairly large, so it'll cover up the whole background of our scene. But you'll see that our map now is it's laying over the top of our map. Wow, it's changed. It has definitely changed. So if we go in, it's because this changes every so often. I should have read, I'm going to read the directions on it now. When was it last updated? And second edition. Oh, it was updated in October of 2024. No wonder it's so much different than the last time I looked at it. That's good information to have, by the way, because this looks much, much different than the last time I did the workshop. So something to note, you look at along here, there's very high and then there's high fire probability. What do you see is that instead of having it be a very high probability of fire now in this area right in the center, I'm going to switch to my layers and turn this one off. You can see that the burn scar that was from the previous fire has used up a lot of the fuel. So instead of being very high, now it's just high in that area, which makes some sense. It'd still be high because there's a lot of undergrowth that's grown, but it's not as thick as it once was in the burn scar of the the fire from a few years ago. So, well, that takes away a little something that I like to show off sometimes, was that if I go to the, let me see, if I go to the old practice map, I don't know that it's on there. No, it's not in there. Oh yeah, it is. If I bring this up to the top, and don't worry, you can't do this right now. This is my old map. Oh no, it's pulling, it's been updated there as well. So that's a live active map. So sorry, I jumped over there to see if it was like that in the past too. So yes, this layer has been updated to reflect the effect of the burn that was there. Previously, what the neat, I wouldn't say neat, that's nothing's neat about the disaster here. But what was interesting was that the model, and that's what this is, a model of likelihood of burn severity or wildfire risk, matched extremely close to the actual burn. The red areas were almost identical to what the predicted highest intensity burn areas were going to be. So it's very supportive of science to see the results. Unfortunate though they may be. So speaking of unfortunate, this is probably as good a time as any for me to bring this up. So the reason why this, or how this workshop came to be, is it so happens let me see if I zoom in far enough. Where's it at? Oh, there you go. I just lucked out. So this right here, this is my property right in this area here, right off of Steely Ridge. It doesn't actually show all the burn. This shows the burn front, but it doesn't show the spot fires that jump over. There were spot fires all over this area over here. So actually 3 acres or so burned right around in here on my property. And my dad's house is right next to the burn edge. So when the fire started in Pi Valley, just slightly over here, we knew that it had started, and just taking precautions, I went up, loaded everything of importance of his and into both my truck and his truck, and we're ready until about 3 a.m. My brother came running and said, "Time to go. The fire is right below the house." And it was very close to the house. So we jumped in the trucks and drove down to Davis, where I was living at the time. And I went online, that the weird hit hatch patterning. At the time when I looked online, there was very little close to real time information about what the fire was doing. And so I started doing as much quick research as I could, and found access to the Cal Fires database and then a bunch of other sources of data, and started piling it together because I was pretty scared my dad's house was going to burn down. It turns out his best friend right next door burned down, as well as other friends' houses in the neighborhood. And everybody was calling and asking me when they knew, hey, I know remote sensing and mapping. Do you have any information? So I looked it up, and then I shared the web map that I saw, something similar to what we showed here, on Facebook. And within 3 weeks, it had 94,000 hits. So pretty high impact for relatively low effort, because it's so important to people to know what was going on. And that relates to why I created the map with the visibility range, where it didn't go all the way down to the bottom. So if, say, want to zoom in and we get to a certain point at neighborhood level, then you can actually see if the house was right below where the burn edge was at. So that was a useful thing that I realized when sharing the map, to say, as people can zoom in, and I can tell them, yeah, zoom in past the burn or the map to see if it has gotten to your house.
There's a question in the chat window about showing the outline of the counties while having the wildfire.
The outline of the burn.
Yeah, there is a question on the chat.
Oh, I'm going to the chat right now. Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. So Shane answered a great question about layer blending. That's good. Is there a way to outline the original map shape? Yes. So here, I'm going to get to that actually. And we're not going to bring in all of the different shapes, but that's part of the CAL FIRE data repository that I said I found access to. Actually had 4 times a day at data that was available showing the perimeter increase. I mean, not every 4 hours was it really an increase. Sometimes they had to do some adjustments and updates, but there was a frequent update of what the perimeter was, and then a final perimeter layer of every day. So I'll show you how to bring that in. Actually, I can bring that in just. There's no reason to not do that right now, and we won't have to come back to it later. The way we do that is we go to the directions. I can skip that stuff because yeah, I'll come to that a little bit later so we can stay on track here. But yes, I'll return to that. As far as adding in some more data, there are a couple other neat things that we can add in are what the air quality data. So that's one that comes up that's interesting, as well as current wildfires in California. So if we were to search for USA current wildfires, Control C, I'm going to copy that, but you can type it in if you want. Click Add, Browse Layers. Not in my content. Clicking the drop down, I'll go to Living Atlas again. And in here, I'm going to put in USA current wildfires and click Add. This is an Esri layer that they produce. It gets updated every day or two. And so if I zoom out on this, you'll see that there are some fires around California that, and then they have different style symbols for what the level of what their meaning are. If you click on any one of them, you'll get a drop down and it'll describe like what acres burned and so forth of what's occurring in California. When it's this time of year, it's not as quite as extreme typically, since the tragic fire down in Southern California. But if it was live, they would show an outline around it for the burned area. So you can see where current wildfires are, but then we're going to also add in air quality. So if I search for air quality instead of the California wildfires or USA wildfires, Control V, or just type in air quality and click Add there. This will come in and you'll see air quality values. ND means it's not active, but you'll see 45, 49, all of those are not terrible air quality measures. I think it's parts per million, of course, with smoke being extraordinarily large particles compared to the other part of the million. Some of these areas during the fire would exceed 1,000. But here's the thing, these values I do know are updated 4 times a day. And this layer is changing, just like that raster layer that we looked at before for the possible burn severity or the fire risk layer. And one way that you can snatch the current values, or I say snatch, but save them as they are, is that you can use one of the analytical tools. And so that's a good time to explore that. So once those air quality points are in, I could go over to layers. Now the air quality now data is already showing on the right-hand side. And what you can do is go down to the analysis tools. So that's down the third one from the bottom on the far, far right-hand side. And I click on analysis. We're not going to actually run this analysis, but I want to show you how you could save it to your own ArcGIS Online as your own layer instead of having it be in this continuously updated layer in the background. And the reason for that would be you could say, look at what the air quality was on this given date. So it's like, say, what the air quality is today when you want to report on it 2 or 3 weeks from now. And here we have all these tools. There's a bunch of options across the top. We'll just click on tools for the top one. And in this case, we would use, I think, use proximity was the right one. Nope. I'm going to, dang it, how does it, I haven't finally use proximity. I thought that was what it was. Oh, join features. They just moved a summarized data. So at the top, join features. So what I could do is click on join features, and I would use the target would be the air quality layer. And then the join layer would probably be some polygon that's coinciding with it, like the US Census counties. And I'm not going to run this right now, but we could just use the spatial relationship as within intersects is fine. And join one-to-one is fine. And I'd go through it, then everything else should be pretty much a default. You'd have to enter in some kind of name. I'm not going to actually run it. We can estimate credits at how much it's going to cost in terms of the credits they showed. It's not too many, 7. And then I could run that. And what the result would be is then we'd have, well, it would be something other than just random type letters, but we would have that file show up in our own ArcGIS Online content with the values still intact from this time. And then when they change later, they wouldn't change with the layer that you saved. So it's a nice way to kind of grab data and preserve it if it's, make it static instead of changing dynamically. Good. And then you also see how you can use the little bit of the analysis tools. And there's many of them right in here. See what time do we got here? Good. We'll go for another 5 or 10 minutes and we'll take another break. Good. Just as a little side note though, and this is a new tool. This is, we're not going to do this today, but this is really, really neat. If I go back to home, this is new. The model builder is a new function that we have in here. This uses credits to do, but like Maggie showed a cost analysis layer earlier, and that would relate to something like this. If you were going to create like stream flow networks, if you wanted to do something like that, where it takes multiple steps of like creating like stream flow direction and watershed, like pour points and fills and all that kind of stuff, you can use your analysis tools. And don't do this right now. This is just show and tell for a second. But so don't click on your model builder. I'm just going to fire it up and just show you what it is. Partially because I just find it really neat. I love the model building possibilities in here. And then once you save that, it'll show up in your tools and you can just use custom tools that you're going to repeatedly use again and again over time. And wow, it's taken a lot longer. I think it's probably like in the afternoon when everybody's getting their last work done in Esri servers or something like that. But once this shows up, then I can create a model. I have to give it a name. I'm just going to give it a random name, tag, junk, and then save. And so this is, and now what I can do is I have the ability to add data. So I can add one of the layers from the map. You can just use any one of them, add. And then I can add tools. I can just join features, add just like we just did. Connect those two. And then I can run a string of processes, like more than just one tool in a row. I could run join features, interpolate, whatever the case is, whatever we want to do with the tools that are available to us. And then once you save this and you run it, if you bring it up and run it, it'll do the whole string of tools and then create the result for you in the end. Good. I'm going to shut out of this, discard changes, and disconnect. Just note, you can see its estimated credits. It runs like about 8 credits a minute or so. So it'll add up over time. Good. So that's one of the neat new analytical functions that has been added, and they're always adding stuff on here. Something that Maggie touched on briefly is that I believe was that we're using the map viewer here. And previously there was something called Map Viewer Classic. Well, once upon a time, it was just called Map Viewer, just like this is, but it was Map Viewer, now Map Viewer Classic. And when they switched over to this new interface, it was limited. It didn't do quite everything that the old version did. And over the course of the last year and a half or so, it's far exceeded what it could do before. And it's much more elegant. It's a little higher. It's more complicated, so there's a little more learning curve maybe, but you can do a lot of stuff with it now. Good, that's just info only. Now let's get back to actually doing our map stuff. We'll go back to the layers here, and we can turn off the air quality one. The current wildfire one's not too pertinent right now, but I want to do a little quick filter. Similar, this is kind of like similar to using analysis, but it's different in that it's just limiting the data that we're seeing. Dang it, this thing is funky sometimes like that with the vision, that base layer. So what I'm talking about is that, see all of these damaged structures right here, we don't want to have to, I mean, a lot of them are not pertinent to us. If I click on one of them, this one shows structure, no damage. And if our theme, and this is just a hypothetical theme of what this map might be, and eventually we're moving towards, is we're going to want to identify structures that are partially damaged that perhaps UCANR could lend support to via our cooperative extension offices, either through our FNEPs and food services, and maybe we have forest advisors and other agriculture advisors stationed throughout the 58 counties of California. And maybe those resources could be connected to the people that need the help the most. And so that's kind of like the underlying theme that we'll be working toward here. And if there's no damage to the structures, maybe that might not be our immediate target clientele or the folks that we want to support. So we might be looking for structures with some damage. And so we're going to filter to just that. And how I'm going to do that is I'm going to go over, and there's this little filter option. First I have to go down to the DINS layer on the far left-hand side, because remember, this conditional on the right, what we have selected on the left. It's a very common Esri thing. And here it is, the third one from the bottom. And so then over on the right, we're going to go to filter. So filter is the third option down. It looks like the little cone here. And I'm going to add a filter. And so this time we're going to say damage is not no damage, but let's just say affected, just for now. We could do it. We could do any number of different sets, but just for the purposes of practice, let's just go with the affected, like 1 to 9%. But that's not the only thing we want. Let's add another level, and we want to have not damage, but structure type. And we'll say single family residence, single story. That's what I'd do. So that's the second option. It could be multi-story, single story, either case. But the feature map that I made relates to single story family. Good. So now we've limited down to a select number of structures. And then we can click save. And then we see just those layers those structures pop up. I noted that we want to try to connect these structure locations for support to our local cooperative extension office. We don't have our cooperative extension office in there yet. And that gives us an opportunity to add in another layer that, again, I mentioned earlier, this kind of map development could be transferable to all kinds of other map interests and using different types of data. And in this case, we're going to use tabular data. So tabular data here is we have a download link for it. I think I already have it up, so I'm not going to, if I clicked on this and I suggest, yeah, click on this on the bottom or top of page 16, this link here. Actually, I can click on it here. It'll come up again and we'll see this CSV file. I've already downloaded it myself today, so I'm not going to download it again. But if I open it just to show you what's inside of it, so go ahead and click download for yourself, and we'll come back to that. Just to see what the data looks like. You don't have to do what I'm going to do right now for a second. I'm going to just open with Google Sheets just to look at it. Just know what we're bringing into our computer. And this is what it is. It's got a field ID number, a location. So it gives the name of the cooperative extension office, and then the address in a single field. So that's important to know that it's a single field that comes up in a moment. It could also be, though, latitude and longitude, or it could be multiple fields with an address where there's the address, the city, and the zip code, or something like that. Is what we're going to do in just a moment. It's called geocoding. And geocoding is taking an address, kind of like when you type into Google Maps and it gives you a pinpoint of where you want to go. That's what Esri has built into their applications as well. So we're going to do something like that, but using a sheet all at once. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the directions and back to my map, and you'll see if you've downloaded it. In my case, I changed the name because I'd done it so many times. I'll change it yet again to 10 because I've got at least that many before I've downloaded. So ANR locations 10 CSV. And then what I can do now that I've changed that, I'm going to keep that download layer there available. I'm going to look at my chat. I see someone chatted. Oh, where do we access the document? Oh, so that should be in an email that came to you at 11:49 earlier today. I can slow down and just, so you need to have these for the download links, though. I can throw the download link in the chat. Just so and then you can bring up the document, which will, because we're going to take a break in just a minute or so. So here, I'm going to Control C. So there's the link to download the cooperative extension offices. Good. Glad I caught that right now. So now we can add that layer in. So once you download it, I'm going to browse layers. Oh, actually, shoot, I'm going to add layer. I'm not going to browse. I'm going to add layer from file. Got ahead of myself. I'm just so habituated to clicking browse layers that I really meant to go over to add layer from file. So the third option down, once I press add. And now we can go to that download file, that CSV, and just drag and drop it into the window. And then we're going to create a hosted feature layer next. All of this is okay. It recognizes that, yeah, the FID, the location's a string, the address is a string, and click next. String just means it's a text string. And then this is where I was saying it was important that we noted that it was all in one field. It says location fields, location information in one field. It'll recognize that automatically on the next step. So I click next. It's got the file. I have to add a tag. Let's say junk, because I'm going to get rid of it later. Good, nothing else. So you just have to add a tag in this next one and then create an add to map. It'll take a moment, but then you'll have this layer come into your project and you'll see points. We'll change the symbol on that point and then we'll take a break. Good. So now if I scroll out, you can barely tell where they're at because the symbols are not really ideal yet. If I go up on the left-hand side and click on layers, the CSV file will be at the very top and it's already highlighted over on the right. So if I clicked it, it would disappear. Click it again, it'll reappear. But I want to change the style of this. And the style button is that little circle, square, triangle, second option down on the far right-hand ribbon on the far right, and click on that. And we're going to go down single symbol and pick a style. So like down number 2, style options, just click on that area. We'll go up and click on the little dot, kind of like what we did with the box of the when we did the counties a little while ago. This time though, we're going to say the current symbol is a basic point, but we'll click on that change on that. So if I go back, click on the basic point and hit the drop down. Let's use government is our option. I just know from past experience, if I scroll down about halfway, 2/3 of the way, I'll eventually get to this little structure, this building looking icon. It seems like a good kind of intuitive marker for what a building might look like. And we can click done, but that's kind of small still. We want to have, it's kind of important. So let's make it just slightly larger. So I just changed the size to 30. That's good to me now. And we'll click close and then click done. So now we have a map with the Cooperative Extension Office in there. Let's, because if we do this too long, we're on a good glide path. We've almost got our map done here in a moment. And then we'll be able to switch to the web mapping applications. But let's take about a 6-minute break until 3:10 and just stretch our legs, decompress for a moment so it doesn't feel like we've been driving in the fog for 2 hours or so. And then we'll continue and finish up. All right. So, like I said, we're almost to the end of the development of the web map, to be differentiated from the web mapping applications that we'll be producing in a moment. So the next one is we already did the filter. Enrichment, I showed you how that kind of stuff can work. And this is also optional. Oh, by the way, just so you know, this is pertinent to some people. It comes up as a ask. On the tabular data, we brought in a CSV from created an Excel, but I also included in here an info only on how to bring in data from a Google Sheet in case you need your data to be kind of dynamic. So if you want to have, or collaborative, for example, you might have a team of people that's adding data into a given Google Sheet, like we do in ArcGIS, and then it appears on a dashboard map that has like updates of different projects and that sort of thing. So one way to do that is you can bring it in from Google Sheet, and the directions for that are right here, but they're a little bit more complex. So we didn't do that way this time for the sake of the amount of time that we have available to us here. But moving on, there's a little bit about data enrichment. That's just I'm going to skip some of that because it's going to, it can't, well, I can show you how it's done, but it's not really, but we won't need it for our map. But it is neat enough that I could show you how. So say we have our DINS layers, and let's put that at the very top. Let's clean some of this stuff up right now since we're getting close to the end of our final project. So it's a good time to do it as any. So in your layers on your web map, as we're coming back, let's start cleaning this up, starting with renaming the layers and then getting rid of the ones that we don't want. In this case, we have the DINS, damage inspection stuff, but let's click rename and we could just call this damage structures. And then click OK. And then the ANR locations, this is good, but that title is not ideal. So let's rename that to, let's say ANR or UCANR offices. Click OK. It doesn't have to be strictly what I'm typing in here. Just to give it something a little bit cleaner, because in the final product, these are what are going to show up in your legend and on your map when people look at it. So we don't want to have like these convoluted or complex names that no one knows what it is. The air quality now data, we don't need that. I have it. See how we can turn on and off with you clicking the eyeball? But what we can also do is go down and remove that data. And current California wildfire, USA current wildfires, let's remove that as well, clicking the 3 dots and go down and remove. Wildfire risk to communities, we're not using that anymore either, so let's remove it. Caldor, final burn severity for teams, let's change the name of that. So we can rename that. Caldor, we can just say Caldor burn severity. So that seems like a good title for it. Click OK on that. And then the USA Census counties, that's fine as it is. So see how we now have a nice clean layers list there. This typically is a common iterative process where you bring in all kinds of different data, you see what you want to use, you get rid of it, and then you rename so it's more intuitive to the user. And then and that's the way you end up publishing a lot of the time. Good. So once we have done that, let me double check in here. Oh, we talked about enriching the data. Now, the one way we can do that is if I click on the damage structures, we could go down to the analysis tools again. The analysis of using the tools, in this case, the enriched data is a lot like join, but what it's doing is it's joining the points that we have there to background data that ESRI hosts somewhere or another that has a bunch of different, mostly demographic attributes associated with it. So I can see damage structures. You don't have to do this whole process, by the way. This is just show and tell now. But you can follow along just so you know what I'm doing. I'm not going to actually run it in the end because it's going to take a while. It's not going to give us a result that we might want to have. But then after I selected the input feature, damage structures, I go down to enrich data. And so I can click on a variable. And the reason I bring this up is you can see that you can bring in different variables like there's population density. I don't want that. So I'm going to keep browsing. I'm going to go back up, cancel or back up. I can do income. So median house income by Esri. That's from census data. So you have that as an option. You can click on that. And then if you were to select that, you would have to put in the measurement value. I'm not sure what the measurement value is associated with. Oh, I've run into this before. So there's measurement type. There's like close to the proximity. You have to set some of these values, but in the end, what you would end up doing is you'd run that and it would include in those points for the census tract or whatever scale Esri has stored for it, the values into the point. So then you would have a new fresh layer called damaged structures with whatever name you gave it down here. They would have all of that information that like in this case, the median household income data for that given area and connected to those houses. So just wanted to show that to you, so you know what it is if you do want to do that for some sorts of projects. We don't need to do that right now though. So I'm going to back out of that. Go on. I already showed you how to do a join. And then we're going to add in the fire. Oh, wait, hold on a second. Oh no, better not hurry up. Proximity. I skimmed past something that I knew I needed to do. So we're going to do a proximity process right now. And what this is it's going to create a roadmap from each of the slightly damaged houses to the cooperative extension office. I, by the way, run this process already for you. So because it takes about 2 to 3 minutes for it to actually run. And to save that time, we can just load it in, but we'll go through the process anyway. So let's do this for the sake of learning. Let's go back. We're going to go back to our tools. And we're going to use the proximity this time. It's proximity. Find closest. Optional. Okay, use proximity. What? Did they move that around? What the heck? I know that it was in here. Use proximity. Oh, I know it. Find closest. You can just type it in. Okay, that's odd. It was under use proximity before. Sometimes you just have to know the name to type in. So I'll have to find out where this layer is at now in the toolbox. It's just they moved it. But with this, we can add in input layer, and we're going to say the damaged structures. By the way, once you've done a filter on a layer, then any form of analysis that you run on that layer thereafter is going to only use those filtered results. It's not going to use all of the collection of like 1,000 or so houses or structures. It's just going to use, in this case, the 10 that we selected, just to kind of make a kind of more tidy map in this case. And we're going to say that the near layer, what we're going to go to is the UC. In our offices, technically you could use barriers. There's a point layer, there's a line barrier, you can have polygons, so you can make sure that it stays within a county, but we're not going to need to deal with that right now. But there's analysis setting, there's a drive time is a good default. I like that. Departure time, we're not going to list that. It was actually that's been added not too long ago. Max number of per unit. This is 1 is okay. And then the max search radius. So let's, we can limit the search range. And so we can have the total number of minutes is fine. We can leave that as a default. Output name, I'm going to just put in a random title right now, but the actual title is in the directions is nearest ANR facilities to threatened structures. There's a little something that's missing here that I was looking for. Oh, option, no. The processing extent should be set to just the image. Oh, in fact, that'd be in environmental settings. They just kind of changed it a little slightly. Happens sometimes. Key thing is you want to click include route layers. That's going to create the roads to and from. And then environment, the processing extent, that's what I was looking for. If we click on environmental settings, I go down to full extent. No, I don't want that. I just want to do the display extent. That way it'll only, if I change the display a little bit and move it over just to make sure that the cooperative extension office and then the buildings are all in the same area, then it's not trying to connect those structures to some other, like say South Lake Tahoe's office, for example. So once that's all done, I would estimate credits. It's probably going to be about 20 credits. I'm guessing it's about a couple. Oh, only 5. That's half a credit per house. That's not too bad. So then what I would have done is I would have run that function, but like I said, it's going to take 2 to 3 minutes. So instead, what I'll do is I'll go over, copy this again. So it's on the bottom of page 18. Right at the end, it's called nearest ANR facilities to threatened structures. And we will go up here and add that in. So browse layers. So add browse layers. It is in my content because I created it, but it's also on ArcGIS Online. So for all of you in ArcGIS Online, and I'll put that in and it should show up as the first option under my name. And then hopefully everyone got that. Add browse layers, ArcGIS Online. Nearest ANR facilities to threatened structures, all with underscores. And I'd add that to the map. And see what you get there, then that would be the result. As if I would have clicked run and waited a couple minutes, then this is the layer that would have appeared for you. So you can see the roadmap for each of these locations. This is actually something that something similar, and what kind of gave me the idea to do this is working with the director of what was then Cal Naturalist, now is California Stewards. He was creating a map that would help coordinate events or something to that effect with the clientele of California naturalists, creating like a network map to see where the best locations for meetups and that sort of thing would be. So this is that's what gave me the idea for trying to connect offices to prospective clientele. This is a background on that for a practical kind of real world use of how this might be applied. Good. All right. So that is how we create the map. There's one more little thing that we want to do. And that would be, we're going to add another layer from a file, but first we got to download that file. And that file was what was asked about earlier, was the perimeter data, an actual outline around the fire burn. This is the layer I mentioned earlier that I got really excited about when I discovered it. I don't know how I discovered it. Google is my friend, I guess. But inside here, if I click on this, so you might have to copy and paste this bottom or middle of page 19. There's under number 1, copy and paste this. I'm using my my Google Doc instead of a PDF. But the Google Doc, that way, if I have to make changes as I go. But if I go to that location, what I get is this FTP site with all kinds of numbers is what we're looking at right away. I'm going to let all of you get there first. Give me a second. So page 19 down middle. If, by the way, if you're trying to copy and paste from a PDF and you're using some Adobe products, it's sometimes difficult. You might have to open the PDF up in something like Chrome or like Explorer or something like that to be able to copy and paste from it. But I haven't heard anybody having a hard time yet, so it hasn't come up. So once we're here, and don't do what I'm going to do because there's no reason to get like lost in the navigation. I'm just going to move up a few levels just to show you what we're looking at. So just stay here for now, but you can see my screen is up. I go up the parent directory, another parent directory up, another parent directory up, even one more. What we're looking at is the CAL FIRE database with there's incidents from 2012, 13, 14, all the way up. I don't know where the campfire ended up at, what year that was at, but I tried looking for it one day and didn't see it. It must have been put somewhere else. But you can see fires from last year. There's throughout here. There's a lightning complex fire. Was looking for the fire that was up by Chico. But so you see a bunch of these different fires depending on how they decided to organize their efforts. But in the case of the Caldor fire, that was in 2021. And this shows all the fires from that given year. And so I clicked on the second one down. And inside of here, a couple of useful ones. The main one is the GIS, but they also have IR, and these are the contractors that were collecting airborne imagery. So there's actually imagery of the fires that are within that we're not going to get into because they're kind of complex. But there's like IR, or it's not actually just IR, it's like optical imagery too sometimes in there. But that data is what was used to create these GIS layers, and specifically incident data. And each one of these are the data products for each date, the end of the day perimeter data that was available. And just if you wanted to, you could collect a whole bunch of these and then show the progress of the burn moving outward. In fact, in my opinion, that would be kind of a cool master's thesis, or even potentially, I mean, if you're doing some kind of fire study, or even like technically you could do it a PhD doing kind of using data like this to answer some kind of question about fire modeling. But of course, you'd have to combine that with other kinds of like wind data, I'm sure, because there's a lot of variables that go into the speed and the size of the burn, how the fire moves. But in this case, we're just going to go with the final end. But actually, the very last one, there's something wrong with it. I don't remember what it was, but there's something wrong with the last date. Nothing changed between the September 16th and the 17th. And so click on the second to last, the 2021-09-16. And inside of there, you'll see two specific layers. One is a geo database that we don't need to deal with. It's similar to what's here, but it's just redundantly copied over, but you can't bring it into your ArcGIS Online, so we don't worry about it here. But the perimeter zip file is something we want. So if you just click on that, it'll download onto your computer. I've already done that. So click on the one that says param zip at the end, and then it'll show up in your downloads. In this case, it'll look like this. I also, just for the sake of showing you what's actually inside of that, so go ahead and make sure you click that, have it show up in your downloads. Find it in your downloads, and then pause for a second while you can see what I'm going to do here. I took that perimeter data and I moved it over into what I call my trash folder. So I moved it over here just to show you what's inside of the folder once unzipped. And you'll see that it's all the shape file, this one here, plus all of the peripheral files that are typically associated with the shape file. So there's projection file, there's a database file, there's an index file, there's auxiliary index file. So there's all these different associated files. Well, the thing is in order for this to work within ArcGIS Online, it needs to be in that zip format that conveniently is how it came down from ArcGIS Online. Or excuse me, it came down from the Cal Fire database. So in this case, what you downloaded in your download folder is exactly what you need, being already zipped. I can't bring it in the way that you can, so I'm going to have to do it a little different because I brought it in already and my computer will not let me import it again, being it's the same name as an existing file. So what you'll do is this. You'll go to your ArcGIS Online, add data, add layer from file. You can go to use your device and navigate to your downloads, or you can just go to downloads and drag and drop that in. And then you just go next, next, next until it finishes. You have to give it a tag. So I go next. See, it won't let me go further than this because it shows that I already have this in there. And if I change the name, it's still, because it's a zip file and underneath the inside of the zip, it has the same names as what has been imported. So I still can't do it. So I'm going to just add it in a different way. But what you'll do, you won't have that problem. And then you can just type in whatever tag you want there, fire, workshop, whatever. And then you'll just create an add to map. And I will load it into mine separately. The way I'll do it is just browse layers and my content. And because I already added in, and here I'll get this perimeter layer that pops in. And that should be about what you get too. I'm going to check the chat because I see some just came in. Well, I just wanted to catch up here. Good. I think, yeah. Thank you, Maggie, for answering the questions. Perfect. All right. Awesome. Drop the chat down again. So just want to make sure everybody's on page because we're going to, in just a moment, we're going to create a web mapping application from this. It's just one little edit first. We're going to go over to the layers and click on that perimeter layer that you just put in. And as it so happens, it still has the tools up. So I'm going to X out of the tools and then bring up the perimeter layer. And I'm going to edit the style. So it'll just be, by default, should be on the properties. If not, you can click on style and then click edit style. And we're going to change it just like we did the US counties layer. We're going to click on the bar, make it black, and then make the fill transparency like quite a ways over there, like 81% transparency. And click done and done. And now if we move that down below the pretty much down just above burn severity, what that'll do is it'll just highlight the buildings. In fact, I could bring the damaged structures up to the top and then they really pop out, and see how just adding that little bit of darkened transparency. It's like kind of like darkened blending. It's a term that's used in the ArcGIS Pro. We're just doing it just in steps like that. Then now we have like the proper like accentuation of the different layers that came up. Good. So at this point, because we got about 24 minutes left, I want to create a web mapping application from this. And to do that, let's do this. Oh, wait, that layer that came in, we did the outside, but it's just a small line around the outside. We can make the outside line darker. So let's go over here to that perimeter data again. Let's rename it by clicking the three dots, rename. We could just say Caldor Fire Perimeter. Click OK. And then if I click on that, and it'll bring it up on the far right-hand side if we click it a couple times. I'm going to change the style again. Change the style here. I forgot to say, let's make the outline, instead of an outline width of 1, let's make it like 3. Click done. See, now you have a real darkened, you could have done 2 also. That might be a little too bold, but it really highlights the burn area. I would probably adjust that back to 2, but we're not going to worry about it now. Good. Let's save. We've already saved it once, so that shouldn't be an issue. It's just automatically you'll save to where it's supposed to be at without adding tags. And let's create a web app. And the way you do that is that if your screen is not all the way expanded like mine is, you might have to click the 3 dots or you extend your screen, but you'll say create app. We'll do an instant app first. Instant app's pretty, well, it's like the name says, it's pretty quick. Click on this. And there's a whole bunch of options. You can peruse the different previews of what they all look like. But for now, we're just going to go with a basic one. We'll click choose the basic. And I'm going to just say IA for, well, actually, that sounds like, well, it's the opposite of artificial intelligence. IA is instant app for me. But you can leave it the same, honestly, it would be fine. And then it's going to carry over the tags, which is good with me. I'm just let it put it in my standard folder, and I'm going to create an app. Take a second for it to come up. Good. Now it looks just like it did before, virtually, right? But the thing is now that we can add some things in here. So one of which, so we can go in, and I hate this. It's like a pet peeve why they have the Express automatically turned on. It doesn't help. It doesn't hurry things up. It doesn't express much or doesn't speed up the process much. In fact, it hides some of the things that you want to do usually. So I turn it off right away, and you'll see a couple options that pop up that are important. First off, we'll click on the map. You'll see the map information here. One thing that is useful here is your map area option. So if I click on map area toggle on, we can click configure. And what this does is it lets you set the map area. So you can zoom it into the right scale and click set. So that'll be the default scale. I'm going to reduce the legend. If I went in a little bit more and set it, it's going to be too narrow, so I have to go back out. That's one of the things about ArcGIS Online as opposed to ArcGIS Pro, is ArcGIS Pro gives you like a little bit more like ability to adjust the range of things. So the value of this, by the way, is if you are going to have a standardized legend pop up, you might want the default to have the map over to the side to allow space for, say, a legend. If it was going to be automatically set up to pop up, which we're not going to do, but this is where you set the automatic default when it pops up on someone's web page. Once this is all done, good, then we can click on let's see, go down to save, not cancel. It was hiding underneath my zoom bar. And so then that's going to be the default scale. Moving down, about, there's a couple little things in here. This is where I said you could have a fixed, open the legend when it pops up. So that's where you might have your map. You want to have to realign where your map is at, but I don't want that. It's going to have it, you're going to have this little drop down legend that's available anyways by default. And so that's by having that toggled on there. And then you can put in alternative text for the map. This is for sometimes if someone's reading on a phone, or maybe they have, I don't know, vision disabilities and they have to use a reader for it. This is where you can enter in alternative text, but we're not going to worry about that right now. And I'm going to worry about the shortcut menu either. Working down the list though, so we're going to have some options here that are very useful. One of which is if we do the explore and navigate. So interactivity, explore and navigate. This is where I like to put in a compass. Call it the traditional cartographer in me. That's without an arrow pointing north. It's kind of, I don't know, kind of odd sometimes. So I like to have the compass included in there, or the location. And the rest of these are fine. You can put in a scale bar, which is kind of nice. It'll pop up down in the bottom. I like having that. Themes and layouts. Oh, wait, make sure I don't, there's some other ones on here too, under interactivity. Sorry, interactivity still. You can look at, have a base map toggle option. I do like that. Think about like your phone, where you can have like a street route option that can be on there. I put that on some of my maps. People understand it. They see the little map, know they can click on it for street view. And then again, on interactivity, you can modify some of the things. You can change the base map, which we've already done in the background. So I'm not going to worry about that. There's sharing options, which we'll explore later. And there's search options, which we're not going to worry about. Theme though. Theme, customize the theme of your app. It's automatically in light mode, but I tend to like darker mode in this one in some cases. So it's a preference. I could go either way, I suppose, but it's, yeah, so you can have actually light might have worked a little better here. I'm thinking of more in the experience builder option. Themes will not be applied in the header when the header's off. So we're going to put in a header, perhaps. That's where the dark mode actually might look better sometimes, because so it brings in the ArcGIS workshop map. If I went back to the interactivity and, themes and layout, sorry, theme, and made it dark then that sometimes makes the title pop a little bit better. Good. By the way, I'm just going through these, giving you different examples. This is one of those things that you can just go down the list and just change things just one after another, taking the theme. You can play with those. You can play with the font. You can add a logo in there if you have one for your organization or whatever, something that's important to the map of some way or another. You can add that in there. Position manager, this is actually useful. You can tell where you want to have the buttons. Say I wanted to have the compass instead on the top left, I wanted on the top right, I can put it over there. I could put it back where it was at before, above the zoom controls, under the zoom controls, so I can adjust where the buttons are at on the map. If you saw those changes, maybe I'll repeat it. So if I look on the screen right here, we see the compass. If I move it up, it'll hop one spot up. I can move it over to the top right, and now it's on the top right. So this is where you can adjust your button locations. There's a language switcher. We won't worry about that. And then just so you know, if you click on the get started, this is going to go through all the steps that we basically did already. And it's going to blue the ones that like search functions that we didn't explore yet, but those are the main ones that we covered already, except for share. So share can go to options and just the publishing, the sharing stuff, but I don't usually do it from here. There's another spot that I do that at. So once all of this is done, I would click publish at the bottom right-hand corner. So that should be the option available to you. You should see that at the very bottom of your screen there. I had to move my Zoom bar, by the way, to be able to see it, and click confirm. Good. And then we can click launch. So it's set the share, sharing is the view that we have right now, but it won't, because it's only set to share to me. This is going to be the only thing that the only map that's, the only person that can use this URL is you while you're logged in. So I am going to go back to my instant app configure, just right where we were at. And I'm going to go down to the share button here. Like I said, I do it in different places than where it said there. I'm going to click share, change share settings, and I can click to everyone and then click save. Review sharing. It says that I have to update the sharing layers below that are available. Now, once I've updated that, now I can take this URL that if once it's published, I can publish it again on it also. It says it's published, but I could publish it again and it'll pop up again. Sure you want to publish it? Confirm. And then if you click launch, it would just reappear this, and then you can copy this URL and send it to your boss, your organization, whoever you want, put it on YouTube like I did, and then have anybody be able to access it. Good. We got like 11 more minutes. This took 10 minutes, so I'm not. Any questions? I'm going to check the chat real quick. Hopefully I wasn't moving too quick there. By the way, if you missed any of those parts, that's one of those things where there's a lot of cartographic kind of license you can take there to make your own, to tailor the map whatever way you want. You're welcome to do that. Let's go back to the actual map again, and let's create another app. So remember, we have all these tabs across the top, and we have the workshop app on the far, this one of these here. What I can do now is create an app, not in Instant Apps, but in Experience Builder. We're going to make this really simple, but I just want to show this to you because this might be my favorite environment to create web apps, mapping applications, not web maps. See, I even do it. You have all of these different templates, tons of templates, and I'm going to show you just the basic blank full screen we'll start off with. So I'm going to create a blank full screen. It should automatically know which map I'm using. It'll pull it in there, but it's not very well spaced in here. So I have to grab this map and stretch it and stretch it and drag it and drag it. So do that. Come on, bugger. Get the corner. Hey, grab it. Finally. Yeah, it doesn't. I don't know why. This is the one thing about Experience Builder that I don't like is that it makes you time consumingly have to drag your map into the full pane. So it's complete all the way in. There we go. Finally. And now scoot over to the side. It should be fine enough. There we go. There it is. Now it fills in the whole entire area. But you can see that the map itself, the mapped area, is teeny weeny in the middle, and it has all this other stuff in there that you don't need. And so what we'll do is we can do initial view down on the right-hand side. You'll click initial view and click custom and then modify. And just like we did before, we'll zoom in. And I know from experience that this time we actually want to be slightly more in than normal, and click OK. Maybe not. When you publish it, it tends to be a little bit, it fills out more. It's like fills the screen more. I might go out one more layer. Oops, that level, and click OK. I know the final product will be actually like kind of further back, but that's okay. Good. The nice thing about this though is that you have a bunch of options. You have scale range that you can set scale, tools, home. You can put the compass turned on here, so you have it like the other map. It'll appear on your map when it's published. And there's a bunch of other options in here. Scale bar is one of the ones that I like to add in there. And then finally, like there's layout tools. You can change how the layout of some of the things are on your map. So those are options. But what also is really neat is that you can add widgets from the far side. And I'm just going to pick at random kind of a measurement tool. And I'm going to drag that down. Put it down in the far bottom side. You can squish this down. It doesn't have to be so big. Put that down in the very corner of your map. And then lock it using the lock. It'll hold it in that position. And what that allows you to do then is use this measurement tool to measure. And you can set the, there's some of the settings in here. Let's see. I gotta move. Oh, so when this is actually clicked over on the right-hand side, you can check if you want to have metric or feet or yards, or say, I'm going to say yards for randomly, and then we're not going to uncheck area. So it only does distance, and then it'll change the size. So we'll have to move it over to the very corner just so it's out of the way, then relock it so it holds it there. And one last thing that I'll show you how you'd put in is a title. And so that's text, and it's down. Is that text? There it is. I knew it's a ways down there. We put in text, drag and drop that to somewhere up toward the top above your map. You can't see the letters, but they're on there. If you start to type, I'd say Caldor Fire. And I might have typoed there, actually. I did. When I highlight over the top of it, then I'll be able to see it. But this is where you can, in the options of the text box will be on the far side. So this is where you can say, I'm going to make the text much bigger, say 30. And instead of, there's line spacing, there's character effects, there's style. There's one of the options at the top right-hand corner, style. I'm looking for the background. That's what I need. I had the border down there. Change the background to something else like a gray. You can do a border on it if you wanted to. I don't typically care. But you can adjust these options, and then you can get really you can get pretty creative on this. I'm going to go back to my content and say I want it centered. Then I can go up and change the you just say Caldor Fires, fine. You can name it whatever you want. Adjust this. If you wanted to have it bold, that might be what we want there as well. So it stands out. And then you have a fairly good map. Finally, what you would do is the same thing as we did before, is we would, once we're we're comfortable with this, we'll publish it. Save and publish. Then there's the drop down arrows at the top right hand corner. So we had the publishes at the top right hand corner. There's the drop down. We can say save as. We can save it as it is. Change the name if we wanted to Caldor Fire. I'm going to just say example. And then tags. Okay. See, it's neat. You get a QR code here, by the way, too, automatically that's available to you, that then you can send that to someone. And again, you can, once you have this published, you can share it with the little play preview button and send someone the URL, and it can be opened within whatever browser someone is using. Go back to Experience Builder. And so yeah, that is essentially the most of what you need to know right there. If there wasn't ever a case where, say, later on you needed to change the sharing settings for this given, not everything already was set previously to be shared to anyone. But if you were going to change the sharing settings later on, you could always go back to your ArcGIS online content. This is the last thing I'll show you. I'm going to leave the map here. I go to my content. This is my Caldor example with my typo. I can click on it. Oh, it's taking a while. Click share there. That's where you can set it to share to anybody or the levels or the groups that you select to. And then that would be available to anybody that's online. Good. So with that said, I think that's plenty for one day. Got through everything 1 minute before the end of the hour. But with that 1 minute, I would like to thank all of you that have stuck it out through the workshop. And also, I would like to mention we have office hours on Mondays and Tuesdays. You can find through the IGIS website, as well as we will be sending out a evaluation form. We really appreciate it if you fill that out. It shows that we're actually putting in a good effort here. That and Maggie just put the office hours in the chat, by the way, but filling out the evaluation form that Priyanka will send out here shortly.
I also put in the chat window the link
Cool,
to the
that'd be
form.
great too. Oh, there it is. Yes, thank you. That it's very much appreciated. It helps us improve these workshops every time. We take it seriously, and we love your feedback, and we hope that you got exactly what you were looking for with this workshop. And again, the YouTube channel is available with this. Will be put up there mid next week, but we also have a lot of other content that's on there too that might be of interest to you. Good, and thank you all, and have a great weekend. And I'll be on here for a couple minutes to see if anybody wants to speak up. You're welcome to. And again, yeah, if not, yeah.
Yeah, I have a quick question. If you published an app and you need to go back and make edits to it, do you need to republish, or is there a way to keep the previous QR code and link and just update the edits?
The QR code and link will stay the same. Yes, you do have to, and depending on what kind of edits you need to make, you sometimes will need to make them all the way back at the original web map if you want to change like layers or so forth, or styles, like the symbology of the layers. But if you make any changes, the QR code and the URL should stay the same, although no matter what.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. This was a really great workshop. I appreciate you all for
Great.
putting this on.
Well, thank you.
Bye, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Take care all.
Take care.
Bye.